There has been some wild stuff going on in Surrey real estate, and today's video is going to give you all of the numbers behind the chaos, behind everything that's actually happening. I'm going to give you a little bit of perspective to think about, as well as where the market likely might head. So if you're new to the channel or new to these videos, make sure you hit that subscribe button. We do these particular ones every month, so you're always up to date on what's going on with the real estate market in the Surrey neighborhood. So without further ado, let's kind of jump into it. So when I'm talking about prices today, I want to make sure you understand I'm talking about numbers coming from the home price index. So what is that? It's not the median price of what's selling. It's not the average price of what's selling. And the reason we don't use those is because those numbers can be very, very much skewed. If you have very expensive properties selling each month and then the following month it's all really cheap properties, it really swings those numbers a ton. So what we're using is what's called the benchmark price that comes out of the home price index. So this tracks the value of what's called the typical home. This is not a real house, but a benchmark property with consistent features. So think a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom home in a specific neighborhood. So this system really watches how that value of what is called a typical home goes up or down over time, filtering out those one-off sales that would typically skew the data. So that's what we're using for the purpose of this video today. And just to give you a little bit of an idea on the market generally and what's happening and whatnot, this is the Fraser Valley Real Estate Board. And the Fraser Valley Real Estate Board is North Delta all the way to Abbotsford, basically. And what you can see in here is the red line on the very right-hand side of the graph. That's the amount of sales that have happened year to date compared to years in the past. And you can see how much lower that is than so many years in the past. It's quite low, and obviously it's kind of been ticking down ever since 2021, which was an anomaly where, the bar is way high. But I also want to bring your attention to the blue line for 2024 as well. That's how many listings are actually on the market. And you can see that is actually the highest it's been since this graph has been published in 1990. So that's 25 years. It's the highest point in 25 years. And I don't have the data going back further than that. So imagine what kind of conditions that creates generally in the real estate market. You've got the most amount of listings in at least 25 years, and you've got a very small portion of sales, kind of historically speaking, at least, towards the 10-year average as an example. That creates conditions that are ultra favorable for a home buyer, not so favorable for a home seller. But micro markets matter, okay? Different neighborhoods and different products and different price points are all doing different things. So that's where you want to get some local knowledge about what's actually happening, because you cannot paint everything with the same brush. There's no such thing as an example as a typical home in Canada, but there is a townhome in the central city neighborhood of Surrey in the price point between $800,000 and $900,000. And that could be doing something very different as an example than the average Canadian home. So you got to be really careful with this sort of stuff and stats and whatnot. To give you an idea of what's been happening with prices, though, across the real estate boards, the Greater Vancouver Real Estate Board, you can see the kind of the flat red line there, which is showing you what's happened over the course of the last little about year, 18 months sort of thing, where prices are today and kind of how that's changed over time. And then the blue line is the Fraser Valley Real Estate Board. So we're almost kind of identical to where the benchmark prices were back in January of 2024. There's some story in between that, obviously, but you can see kind of where that's ended up. So let's get into the different types of products now. Condominiums, right now, they came in at a 10.7 sales to active ratio. So what does that mean? That means about 1 out of 10 homes that are actually going to the market are selling right now in the city of Surrey. So that's a challenging market. We would call that a buyer's market condition, where the buyer certainly has the advantage. Things are sitting around a lot longer. There's lots of choice for the buyer. And then what does the sellers have to do? Well, the sellers, to woo the buyer, they have to be priced right, or they have to adjust their price or take maybe price cuts to actually get that deal done with the seller. So that does have an impact on pricing over time. And you can see it certainly has since basically about February of this year. What happened in February of this year? We'll talk about that at the end of the video. But we've seen prices just slide and slide and slide since February of this year. So putting that into real numbers, well, over the last month, condos in the area of Surrey, and this is all of Surrey, so it includes Cloverdale, South Surrey, North Surrey, the middle of Surrey, all that sort of stuff, are down about $12,000 in just 1 month. Now, this is one of the bigger numbers that I have seen when I've been tracking this in quite some time. And over the last year, they're down about $31,000. So you might be asking why that is. And actually, you're going to see these numbers being a little kind of consistent with these bigger numbers across townhomes and detached as well. Well, look at what happened in basically in the spring of 2024. We saw quite a big hump and a growth in terms of prices. And this is the same with townhomes and detached. And then that hump came backed off, right? So we're in the spring this year now, and we didn't get a similar hump. We didn't get that growth in price in the spring market. So what you're going to see is that it looks like we've lost a lot of value year over year, and we have, right? So, but that's a little bit of the reason why. So in a market condition like this, if you're looking at buying or selling a condo, the advantage is certainly in the buyer's favor right now. Now, I want to caution you to be very, very careful on timing the market, especially if you're a first-time home buyer. You need to consider what you're paying in rent, and you need to consider what happens if the market actually switches. So paying attention to that sales to active ratio graph is always a really good way of doing that, and see if we kind of end up in the balanced market territory or into a seller's advantage market territory. But just be careful on timing the market, especially if you don't have something that you're already calling home. The other thing, we've talked a lot about new construction being stalled. There's lots of videos on our channel about new construction, the detriments of not only buying new construction, in our opinion. There's also been a lot of talk about taxes on new construction recently, but there's also been a lot of problems with new construction. So definitely check out some of those videos. But the new projects coming to market are certainly pretty stalled right now. And if you're selling a home, I got to tell you, pricing your home properly, it really, really matters. And for those of you that have a condominium, whether you're an investor or whether you're somebody that bought into a condominium, we have a video coming out on July the 16th that we did with a CPA, Jimmy Lee Tang from Achieve CPAs. And it's a brilliant video talking about some strategies for those people who want to sell their homes, specifically condos, but if it's an investment property, what you can do and how you can actually recover some of your losses if you're going to be experiencing them. So you're going to want to check that out. It's coming out again on July the 16th. So let's talk a little bit now about townhomes and what's going on with those. So in townhomes, you're going to see they're actually in a balanced market territory. Okay. So what you're seeing here is they came in at about 15.4%. So that's about 1 out of 6, generally speaking, townhomes coming to the market selling. So we would actually suggest that there's no advantage to anybody in this market. Prices ideally should kind of be staying flat, or, they're going to waver a little bit, of course, but generally speaking, they should be staying a little bit flat. So what is actually happening? Well, we have seen quite a good decrease since about February or March of this year. So I do find these pricing graphs tend to trail what's actually going on in the market a little bit, usually by about 2 months. But this is the real raw data that I wanted to share with you. So to give you an idea of what that means month over month, townhomes are down about $8,400. And in the last year, they're down about closer to $32,000, which obviously isn't a number to sneeze at there. So again, the advantage based on what I'm seeing in terms of the supply and the demand, though, there's really no advantage to anybody. We are in a balanced market right now. So you do want to watch that. You want to pay attention to these videos each and every month when we do them to see where that market is headed. Again, if you're timing the market to get into it, you're going to want to see if the demand starts increasing and increasing and increasing. That's where you start to see the price growth happen. So make sure you pay attention to that. And this is going to be the market to watch. Because it's also the missing middle. Townhomes are still the only market that kind of offers families who need both space and affordability somewhere great to live. So I do expect this market to perform much better than the other markets, at least in current day kind of conditions and whatnot is what's happening. So I would guess, and I'm projecting here, but I'm going to guess the price drops are going to minimize, if not stop. So time will tell. We'll have to see. I'm not a fortune teller, obviously, but again, follow these videos and we'll see if I'm right. And, you hold me accountable in the comments. Let's see. So let's move on to detached homes now. Big, thick red line there. Well, it's so thick because detached homes, so few of them are selling right now. So you can see detached homes are at about 9.9%, or about 1 out of every 10 again are actually selling when they go to the market each month, which is a market where you're going to see price drops. There's a lot to look at, and one of the best ways to woo a buyer, you can do lots of updates and keep your house clean and all that sort of stuff, but it's to adjust your price to, the area where it makes sense for the market. So this is what's happened with pricing for detached homes. And again, since about February of this year, it's just been like, wow, like in terms of watching what's been happening. So month over month, again, one of the bigger numbers I've seen since I've been doing this, down about $33,000 month over month. That's a big one. But again, remember, we did have some pretty big growth in the spring of last year as well. So that you got to take that for what it is. And year over year, we're down 90,000. That more supports the point I was just making, but certainly a really big change month over month at $32,000. So the advantage is well in the pockets of the buyers here. There's tons of inventory to choose from. They got all day to go look at stuff. Pricing your home right, guys, if you're selling it, it matters. It's got to be in the right zone. And if you're not prepared to put it in the right zone, it's just simply not going to sell. You should just save your time and do something, more valuable with it and relook at the market if you're not prepared to accept kind of the market trends and values of what's actually going to cause your home to sell. You can list it for sale, but that doesn't mean it's going to sell. There's two totally different things. So, and you got to dress it up right? It's got to be clean. It's got to be in good repair. It's got to be priced appropriately to reflect what's going on in there. So, prices here are going to remain challenged. We're not done yet. We're not done seeing the price adjustments, in my opinion. We're not done seeing the numbers come down. So, hopefully that doesn't last too much longer. There's lots of talk about what might happen this particular month in July. And, I'll skip to this right now. But let's talk about economic shifts, specifically doing a deal with the United States on a trade deal. So there's a lot of talk that that's actually going to be happening this month. Who knows what's going to happen, but that'll certainly give a lot more certainty to everybody in the market. And the market loves certainty. So let's see what happens. Fingers crossed. I think that would be a really good thing for all of us. And I was talking a lot about all these things that have happened since February. Well, somebody got into power in February and really kind of gave a whole shake up to the economies all over the world. And ideally, if we can have a trade deal with the United States at that point, then, coming this summer, then I think that's going to have a big impact on the certainty in the market. Therefore, people will become a little more comfortable actually spending money. Now, I want to talk about mortgage rates as well. We've got a Bank of Canada announcement coming up, and there's a lot of projections saying that there will be a rate cut in the upcoming meeting. So we'll have to stay tuned and see what happens with that. But you got to ask yourself, if you're somebody that's been considering buying a home, at what point is having all this great inventory with all these great price adjustments, and then the money starts becoming cheaper and cheaper? It's come down quite a bit in the last 18 months from where it was. And if it continues to get cheaper, at what point do people really start saying, geez, I've got a good opportunity here to jump into the market. I am going to jump in. I'm going to start buying things. You just want to make sure you're paying attention to that, because you don't want to be late to the party necessarily. We know there's lots of demand out there. I am convinced there's lots of demand, but there's a lot of people that are very hesitant because of that lack of certainty that we talked about. And seasonal trends, we're going into the summer months now. I'm filming this in July as an example. The summer months are typically slower months. Now, have we had a regular market since 2015? Not really. Like, the market just always is going like this, it feels like. So if we start to see a more traditional kind of summer market, it's probably going to be pretty slow. So, I think at least for the next 2 months, we're probably going to have some more challenge kind of conditions for sellers and whatnot. So pay attention to that with the fall market coming up. However, that's typically the second busiest time of the year. So we'll have to see what this fall brings. And hopefully it's better, because I don't think many people like the idea that prices are going down kind of like they are right now. And then the last one is local policy changes. So living in British Columbia, our government is always doing wacky stuff with housing. Some of it's been really great. Some of it has been not so great. So the point of that is based on what's happening in the market. I don't think there's going to be a lot going on from our provincial government for quite some time. It's not great for housing to be doing what it's doing, and it's not great for housing not to be transacting for them, because that property transfer tax that people pay when they buy goes into their coffers and helps funds all the great things that they do with that money, right? So the lack of sales is certainly not a good thing for them either. So we'll have to wait and see if there's any kind of crazy new things coming out. I call British Columbia the petri dish of North America. It's where all the wacky and wild things come out. And again, some of it's been good, some of it's been not so good. But lots on this channel to check out if you're curious about what I'm talking about. We always post about what's happening with real estate, with the government and whatnot, what's happening with rates, all that sort of thing. And if you like this video and you want to be kept up to date on what's happening in the real estate market in Surrey, make sure you subscribe and you're going to get access to all that stuff and be notified when new stuff's coming out. And the last thing I'll leave you with is, I'm just curious if there's anything you'd love to see in these videos to help give you a better perspective to make good decisions when it comes to your real estate. So anyways, thanks for subscribing. Thanks for listening to me. I'm Darren with the German Group, and we'll see you next month on the same style of video. Cheers.